Today we're going to talk about the difference between speed and velocity because they are a little bit different. Sometimes we use them interchangeably and sometimes that works, but they actually are two different things, but sometimes they work out to be similar. But let's go over these today. Let's go ahead and go over these. So speed, a lot of people are familiar with speed, right? Because of a speedometer on their car or their bicycle. And usually that is represented by just a number, just a magnitude, right? So for example, 5 miles per hour. What does that mean? That means an object is traveling 5 miles each and every hour. That's what it means to go 5 miles per hour. You are traveling 5 miles each and every hour. All right, so let's go ahead and give these some definitions, or we'll put some formulas up there for you. Right? So first of all, speed. Speed equals distance divided by time. Right? So that's the formula. The amount of distance you travel over the amount of time it takes to travel that distance. Velocity is going to be a little bit different. Average velocity equals displacement over time. So both involve time, however, speed involves distance and velocity involves displacement. Now again, in a previous video, we talked about how distance and displacement can sometimes work out to be the same number. And other times, they can actually work out to be a different number. So make sure you watch those videos. So that's our first difference between speed and velocity, is they have slightly different equations. The second difference is velocity involves a direction. It's a vector quantity. It has both a magnitude, which is what you use this equation for, and a direction. So you got to give the direction. Speed is a scalar quantity. It has no direction. So which one do you think might be more useful to you? If you're driving, if you're going to visit some friend in another city, and you need to find your friend, right? You're in the city, but you have no idea where your friend is. So you pull up the GPS, and the GPS says you're 5 miles away, but you don't know the direction. Well, that leaves a lot to be desired, right? Because you could go 5 miles in that direction, that direction, that direction. You got like 360 different directions to choose from. So it would be much more helpful if you, along with the distance, or I should say along with the magnitude of that velocity, you had a direction. And that would put you right where you need to be. So in physics, oftentimes we're going to go with velocity. That's going to be a much more useful quantity to us. All right. So that's the difference between speed and velocity. Now in both cases, the units are going to be the same. The units for distance are going to be meters, and the units for time are going to be seconds. And the same thing goes for displacement. The units are meters, and time is going to be seconds. So if I say a car, let's say this, a car is traveling at 10 meters per second. So what does that mean? That means that the car is traveling 10 meters each and every second. So during the first second, it goes 10 meters. During the next second, it goes 10 more meters, so now it's 20. During the next second, it goes 10 more meters, so now we're at the 30 mark, and so on and so forth. So that's what that actually means. That's what that actually means. And let me go over one more formula for velocity, for average velocity. So this was one formula. Let me go ahead and rewrite it. Average velocity equals displacement over time. So I'll put a box around it. That's one formula. Another formula would be this, right? Let's say you get 2 grades in my class. Let's say you get a 90 on your first test, and you get 100 on the second test. What's your average? It's going to be 95, right? How did you do that? 90 plus 100 divided by 2. 95. That's how you find an average. You take two things, add them together, divide by 2. Well, we can kind of do the same thing here. if we know the initial velocity of an object, and we know that object's final velocity, then we can add them together and divide by 2 to figure out the average velocity. So that's going to be our second formula. All right? So let me just give you an example of that. Let's say I'm in a car and I'm at rest. So I'm at 0. And then I speed up to 10 miles an hour. So my final velocity is 10 miles an hour. My initial velocity was 0. So what's my average velocity? Well, 0 plus 10 divided by 2, 5 miles per hour. So that's how you would actually use that formula. Pretty straightforward. So those are 2 formulas that we're going to use later on when we solve problems. All right, that's it for speed versus velocity.